Coding Dojo is a programming school that turns beginners into developers in only 14 weeks. Over 90% of their grads land jobs within 3 months of graduating, often making over $70K per year. To learn more, visit codingdojo.com or click the link in the description below. Hey, what's going on, guys? In this project, we're going to build a web application that allows us to add filters to an image and add effects, and then we can download the image afterwards. And we're going to be able to do this because we're using the CamanJS library, which is used to manipulate images, and it's very easy to use. You can see the syntax here. All we really have to do is say Caman, pass in the image, pass in a callback, and then we can change the brightness, the contrast, and a lot of other things. And we can pass in certain values depending on, how much we want to change it. We can also pass in negative values as well. So this will be what allows us to actually add the filters and stuff. But obviously we're going to be doing a lot more because we have to add event listeners for our elements. We'll be building this interface with Bootstrap. We'll be using HTML canvas to display our image. So quite a bit will go into this little application. So let's do a quick demo. I'm just going to click Browse and select an image. And if I go and I click the plus sign for brightness, I can keep clicking it. It'll keep getting brighter. If I want it to go back down, I can click the minus. Same thing with contrast, saturation, vibrance. And then if I want to remove the filters, I can click this button here. All right, and if I want to add an effect, like let's say Sin City, I can remove it. Nostalgia. Get some weird names for these effects. What else? Cross process, and we can mix the filters with the effects as well. So pretty cool. Now let's say that I was happy with this. This is what I wanted. I could go ahead and click download image, and what will happen is it'll download as the name and then -edited.jpg. That's how we're going to set it up, and we can go ahead and save it. And if I go to show in folder, you can see there's the edited image. All right, so that's what we'll be building, guys. Hopefully you enjoy it, and let's get started. All right, so we're going to get started now. If you want to follow along, you only need to create 3 files. So I have a folder called online image filter with an index.html, a main.js, and a style.css, and they're all completely empty. Okay, so we're going to be starting from scratch as usual. So let's start off with the HTML. Now I'm using VS Code, so I can use Emmet by doing exclamation tab, and that'll give us a basic boilerplate. I'm just going to close the sidebar for now. And let's change the title. We'll just say online image filter. You can call it something different if you want. And then we're going to link our style sheet. So let's put in style.css. And then we're also using Bootstrap, but I'm going to use a customized version from bootswatch.com, and the version I'm going to use is the Flatly. Of course, you can choose whatever you want, but I'm going to click download and then just grab the URL right here. Okay, and we'll put that right up here in a link tag. All right, so that takes care of the head area. Now we're going to start in the body. So let's add a navbar, and it's not going to have any links or anything. It's going to be very, very simple. So let's say nav. I'm using Emmet, so I'm going to add a class of navbar, a class of navbar-dark, bg-info, and let's add a class of mb5, which is a margin bottom class to push things down. And then I'm just going to throw a container in here, and inside here we'll have our a tag with the class of navbar brand. And for the text, I'm just going to say online image filter. All right, so we'll save that. Now you can open this just with the HTML file, or you can, if you're using VS Code, you can use Live Server, which is what I'm doing. I have an extension here called Live Server, which allows us to have auto reload and stuff like that. So I can just do right click, open with Live Server, and that will open. All right, so you can see we have our navbar. It looks a little different because we're using Bootswatch. That's what I wanted. I like using this once in a while because it kind of gives you a different look than the standard Bootstrap style. All right, so under the navbar, we're going to throw in, let's see, let's go under nav, and let's throw in a container. And in the container, we're going to have a row. And in the row, we're going to have a 10 column div. So we're going to do col medium 10. And then I'm also going to add a class of m-auto to push it to the middle, okay, margin auto. And then in here, the first thing we want is our file upload. So with Bootstrap, we want to put a class called custom file. Yeah, just custom file. I'm also going to do an MB3, which is margin bottom 3. And then in here, we want two things. We want an input with a class of custom-file input. It's going to be a type of file. And then we want an ID here as well for us to use in our JavaScript. And we're going to call this upload-file. All right, underneath that, we want a label. We're going to give this a class of custom-file-label. And the for attribute will be upload-file. All right, and then in the text, we'll just say choose image. So let's save that, and there's our image upload field. All right, now underneath that, under this div right here of custom file, we're going to put our canvas. So we want a canvas element with the ID of canvas. And if I save that, we're not going to see it because we need to actually add a little bit of CSS. So we're going to go to our style.css and put in our canvas ID here. And let's give it a margin. I'm going to give it a margin auto, a background, and the color is going to be EC 3 times, which is a light gray. And then we're going to do a width of 100%. Oops, not 100%. Or $100. And there we go. So now we can see the outline of our canvas. All right, so back to our HTML. Now we're going to go under the canvas, and let's put a heading in here. I'm going to put an H4 with the class of text center to put it in the middle. And let's also do a class of my-3. My just means margin on the top and bottom. And we're just going to say filters. All right, under that, we're going to have a row. And this row will have a class of text center. And let's also do a class of my4, margin on the top and bottom. And then inside here, what we're going to have is 4 3-column divs. So we want call MD3, and then each one of these will have one of the buttons. So we'll have the brightness, the contrast, and so on. Now it's not going to be just a button. These are going to be button groups because we have the minus, which is a button itself, the middle, which is the label, and then the right, which will be the plus sign button. So let's create a button group with btn-group. And let's make it small by saying btn-group-sm. Okay, and then in here we want our 3 buttons. So this one will have a class of filter-btn. Okay, all the filters and effects, they're going to have this filter button class. That's what we're going to use to grab onto in the JavaScript. And then they also need a special class so we know what it actually does. So this is going to be brightness-remove. In addition to that, we want the Bootstrap button class and then the Bootstrap button color class, which is button or btn-info. Okay, and then we're just going to put a minus sign in there. And then the next will be a button with the class of btn secondary, which will make it gray. And then I'm also going to give it a class of btn disabled. That's not a Bootstrap class, but I'll show you why in a second. And then we're just going to say brightness. Okay, and then the last button in the group is also going to have a class of filter-btn, and then it's going to have a class of brightness-add. Okay, the other one was brightness remove. This is add. And let's do btn and btn info. And we'll put a plus sign in here. So let's save that, and that's what it should look like. Now, the middle, you can see it looks like you can click here, and I don't want that. So first thing we'll do is disable the second button by putting disabled like that. Okay, but we still have an issue with the color. It kind of still looks like you can click it. So in our style.css, I'm just going to add btn disable. Oops. btn disable. and we want to set the color to always be white, and let's make that important and save. Or is it disabled? Yeah, there we go. So now it doesn't look like I can click on it, or I can't click on it, but we can on the sides here. All right, now the other three buttons are going to be just like this. They're just going to have different names and classes and stuff. So I'm going to copy the entire call MD3, and we're going to put 3 more in. So 1, 2, 3. Okay, so we have brightness. The second one is going to be contrast. And then what we want to do is change these 2 classes. Brightness remove and brightness add should now be contrast remove and contrast add. So if I hover over this, or if I highlight this and I click Control D once, it'll select the next brightness, and then we can change them both to contrast at the same time. All right, we're going to do the same thing here with saturation. So we'll go ahead and grab that, Control D once, saturation, and then this will be vibrance. There we go. Save, and there, that looks good. So now we need to add our effects. So what we want to do is go under the row that holds these 4 columns right here. So it starts here and it ends here. And I'll just put a little comment in here saying this is the end of the row. And then we're going to create, actually we're going to need another heading. So I'm just going to copy the one we did up here. And we'll put that here, and we'll change this to effects. Okay, and then what we'll do is put in another row. And let's see, this row I'm also going to give a class of MB margin bottom 3. And these are going to be 3 columns as well, so call MD3, except it's not going to be button groups now, they're just going to be single buttons. Okay, so let's do button, and it'll have a class again of filter-btn, and then we want a class of vintage because that's going to be this effect -add. Okay, and then just our bootstrap classes, which is btn, btn-dark, and btn-block. And we'll say vintage. And if I save it, it'll look like that. All right, now what I'll do is copy this call MD3, and we want 3 more. 1, 2, 3. And we basically just want to change the effect in the class. So the second one is going to be Lomo. And we want to change this vintage add right here to Lomo add. All right, this one here is going to be clarity. So we'll make sure we change the class. And let's see, the last one is going to be Sin City. So we'll change the class here. Now there's no remove because the effects, we're not going to be able to have a button to remove the single effect. We'll have to use the remove filters button for that. All right, so let's save that. And then what we'll do is we need another row of effects. So I'm going to copy this row. Let's put a comment here. Okay, so we'll just grab this and paste that in. And then we just have another few effects here. This is going to be cross process. I know these are really weird effect names. So we'll change this right here to cross process. I'm not putting any capitals in my classes. Let's see, this next one is going to be pinhole. Oops, pinhole. And then we have nostalgia. And we have, what's the last one? Her Majesty, which is really weird. So we'll change this here to Her Majesty. All right, let's save. And there we go. There's our effects. Now we have one more row to do. and that's going to be the download button and the remove filters button. So this is actually going to be we're going to have two 6-column divs here, so side by side. So call MD6. Let's put a button in here. I'm going to give this an ID of download BTN and class of BTN primary, and let's do BTN block. Okay, and this is going to say download image. Okay, and then we'll just copy the call MD6, which is this, paste that in right underneath, and then this is going to be the remove filters. So we want to change the ID to, let's call it revert button, and let's change button primary to button danger to make it red, and save. All right, so that looks good. One thing I'm going to do is just add to the row MY5 just to give it some space on the top and bottom. And that's it. That's our interface. Now, two things we have to add down here are the script. We need to add the CamanJS script and also our main.js script. So CamanJS we can get from Cloudflare. I want to use a CDN. So this right here, we want the full minified version. So I'm going to say copy script tag, and we'll throw that in right here. And then we'll also put in our own script of main.js. And that's it. Or that's it for the HTML at least. So now we're going to hop over to our JavaScript. So let's go into the main.js file. Close that up. So what we're going to start off with here is just defining a bunch of variables. So we're using canvas. So let's define our canvas. So we want document dot, we'll use get element by ID. Remember we gave the canvas an ID of canvas. And then we want the context of the canvas. So we'll create a variable called ctx, set that to canvas dot get context. And I plan on doing a crash course on HTML canvas soon. We just want to pass in here 2D. We're not doing too much canvas stuff here anyways. All we're doing is placing an image in it. All right, so let's see. We're going to create a variable called image and set this to new image. All right, now this is going to be replaced later. That's why I'm using let. Okay, if you use const, you can't redefine anything. Same thing with the file name. I'm going to set this to just nothing right now. Oops, just to an empty string. All right, and then let's grab some of the elements we need, like the download button. So we'll use document dot get element by ID. We gave it an ID of download dash BTN. And let's see, let's actually copy this down twice because we also need the upload file. So upload file, and that had an ID. Oops. That had an ID of upload dash file, I believe. Let me just double check that. So we're looking at our upload. Yeah, right here, upload file. And then the last one we need here is the revert button, which we gave an ID of revert button. All right. Now, initially, when I was going to do when I was going to put this together, I was going to add an event listener, or for every single button here, which would have been bad. I guess it would have been bad practice because we would have to put every single button into a variable and then call .add event listener on every single one. But what we're going to do is we're going to call add event listener on the document itself, and we're going to use event delegation to basically target what we want. Okay, and then we're going to have a bunch of else if statements or if else statements. and we'll look at this here, these classes like contrast remove, contrast add, and based on which class it is, that's what's going to decide which Caman method we call. Okay, so let's do that. Actually, you know what? Before we do that, let's do the upload, just so we can get the image in here, because we want to be able to select an image and have it display in the canvas. That's not happening yet. Okay, so let's do that first. So what I'll do is I'll put a to-do here. We'll say to-do filters. Okay, and then let's do upload file. Now we have our upload file variable, and then we want to call an event listener on that. We want to listen for a change, and we'll just use an arrow function here. All right, we'll pass in our event, and in here we want to, let's say, get file. So I'm going to create a variable called file and set that to document dot get element by ID, and pass in here upload dash file. And basically we're going to have an array called files, and we want the first element in that array. That'll give us the image, so we want to put a 0 in there. All right, that'll give us our file. Now what we want to do is initialize the file reader API. Okay, so if you've never used that before, you might want to look on the MDN docs at it. And we're basically going to use this to get the file and read it as a data URL, and then we're going to insert it into our canvas. All right, so let's init that. We'll say init file reader, and we're going to create a variable called reader. Set that to new file reader, like that. Then we want to check for the file. So if file, then let's set the file name. So we're going to say file name. Remember that variable we created up here? It's set to nothing, set to an empty string. We're now going to set it equal to file.name because we have that accessible to us now. Then what we want to do is read the data as a URL, and we're going to do that using reader dot read as data URL, and then just pass in the file. Okay, now once we do that, we want to add the image to the canvas. So we're going to say reader, and we're going to call an event listener, or add an event listener to the reader, and say when it loads, then we want to do a couple things here. So first we want to basically create the image. So we can take our image variable, and we're going to say equals new image, and then let's set the source of that image. So we'll say image.source, and we can set that now to the reader.result. Okay, because we have it as a URL inside the reader, now we want to set the image source to that. And then what we'll do is we'll say on image load, add to canvas. So we can say image.onLoad equals a function, and in this function we'll say canvas. Okay, remember we defined canvas way up above, and we're going to set the width of the canvas to the width of the image because we can get that. Same thing with the height. I can't spell height. Okay, next thing we want to do is actually draw the image on the canvas, and we can do that using the context, and then we can use draw image. Okay, draw image takes in a couple of things. It takes in the image itself. It's going to take in where we want it to start, so we're going to do 0, 0, and then it takes in the width, which will be image.width, and it takes in the height, which will be image.height. Okay, and then the last thing we want to do is take the canvas and we want to remove an attribute. Let's say remove attribute. Who needs jQuery? Remove attribute, and the attribute we want to remove is data CamanJS-ID. I'm not exactly sure why we do this, but I don't know, it's instructed to. So I think that's pretty much it. Oh, we just want to pass in false right here. And that should do it, I believe. Is that? Actually, I don't know if that looks right. Hold on. Yeah, that's right. So let's save it. Now you'll see when I save, things changed up a little bit. I mean, the code didn't change, it's just the positioning. It's because I'm using the Prettier extension. It just kind of cleans up your code a little bit on save. That's how I have it set up. All right, so let's try the upload. So I'm going to go back and I'm going to browse and grab this image here, and there we go. So now it gets uploaded, it gets put onto the canvas. All right, good. So now that that is happening, now we can work on the filters. So let's go here. Let's say add filters and effects. Okay, so like I said, I'm going to be using event delegation here instead of putting an event listener on every single button, which I don't think is the best practice. So let's say document dot add event listener. It doesn't have to be the document, it can be any parent of these buttons as long as they're all inside whatever you put here, but I'm just going to use the document. And I'm going to say click. Okay, we want to pass in our event parameter here, and then what we want to do is target the anything that has filter button on it, this class here, because all of these do, both the plus and minus and the effects. So the way that we can do that, and there's a lot of different ways that you could do this here, but this is just what I'm doing. I'm going to say e.target, so whatever is clicked, dot class list. Okay, it's going to look at whatever classes the element we click has, and we want to see if it contains the class of filter-btn. Okay, we want to see if it contains that. If it does, let's just do a test, and we'll do a console log of whatever, 1, 2, 3. So if I go ahead and open up my console here, let's put this on the bottom. And I go down and I click this plus or this plus or any of these, you'll see that it's actually firing that off. If I click download or remove, that's not, because those don't have the class of filter button. All right, now what we want to do is check for the individual filter classes like brightness add or brightness remove, things like that. So this is going to get kind of long because there's a lot of different buttons. But we're going to do it in the same way by using if e.target.classList.contains, and we'll pass in here, let's do brightness dash add. So if that is clicked, then we want to call Caman. Remember, we saw this in the documentation. It takes in the canvas element, which is an ID of canvas. It takes in the image, which is going to be in the image variable, and then a function. Okay, don't use an arrow function here because it won't work. We need to say this dot brightness, and then we can increment it however we want. I'm going to use 5. You could do 10 or 15 or 20 or anything, but we're going to do 5, and then we just want to call dot render. Okay, so that will increase the brightness by 5. So we can actually test out the brightness add. So let's upload the image and let's click the plus sign here, and there we go. Now it's not going to work if I go down, or none of these other ones are going to work because we haven't added them yet, but we're basically going to do the same thing. All right, so let's go down here and let's say else if, And basically we're just going to check for the next class. Whoops, hold on a second. Else if e.target.classlist.contains, and now we're looking for brightness remove. So if it contains that, then what do we want to do? We want to do Caman, or Caman, I don't know, and canvas image function, and then we'll call this dot brightness dot render, except with this time we're going to pass in -5 instead of 5. Okay, so let's save that. We'll try that out. So we'll make it brighter, and then we'll click the minus, and it gets darker, and we can keep making it darker. Awesome. So now we just need to do this for the rest of these. So let's just copy the else if right here. So from the else down to this curly brace. By the way, I'm using a VS Code extension called Bracket Colorizer, which is very handy in situations like this when you have a hell of a lot of curly braces. It matches them by color, and it's really handy. So I would recommend that. But let's copy that, paste that in, and next one we'll look for is contrast. Let's say contrast add. And then down here, all we want to do is change this dot contrast to 5. Whoops. Like that. All right. I'm actually going to make this bigger. Okay, so now I'll paste in else if again. This time we'll do contrast remove. I'm just going to do Control D once to select the next brightness and change that to contrast. That'll be -5 because it's a remove. All right, and then I'm just going to paste in a bunch. And then we'll go back up. So we have brightness add, brightness remove, contrast add, contrast remove. Now we want, what's the next one? Saturation. So what I'll do is Control D. Actually, we can Control D again and again, because both of these will be, all of these will be saturation, except this one will be saturation add, and we want to take away the negative here. All right, so saturation add, saturation remove. All right, next we have vibrance. So I'll do Control D, 1, 2, 3. Vibrance. Okay, this one will be vibrance add, and that'll be +5. All right, now that's it for the filters. Now we have the effects. So next one is vintage add. So I'm going to change this to vintage-add. Change this to this dot vintage. Now the effects aren't going to take a number. It's just going to be this dot vintage dot render. Okay, and then this one here. The next one is going to be Lomo. Whoops. So we'll change this dot Lomo. Get rid of that. Next one is going to be clarity. And I know this is tedious, but trust me, it's better than not using the event delegation and adding an event listener for every single button. And if you guys have a shorter way of doing it, be my guest to leave a solution. All right, so we have a few more. So I'm going to copy this last else if. And let's do paste in that, just a couple more. So after clarity, I'm sorry, this should be Lomo add, clarity add. And then the next one is Sin City add. Okay, you also want to make sure you change this. And it's going to be camel case here, this dot Sin City. This next one is going to be cross process dash add, and this is going to be this dot cross process camel case. Okay, the next one is pinhole add, and this dot pinhole. Next one is nostalgia. We're almost there. What is it? Nostalgia dash add. And let's see, the last one is Her Majesty dash add, and then this dot Her Majesty. All right, so let's save that and let's try it out. Okay, so we'll make sure that we get no errors and that these work. So I'm going to open up my console. I'm going to upload an image. Okay, let's try our filters. Brightness, we already know that works. Contrast works. We can make it higher or lower. Saturation works. Vibrance works. All right. We didn't add our remove filters yet. We probably should have, but that's fine. Let's just reload. So now for the effects, we have vintage, Lomo, and they're going to just pile on top of each other. It's going to look kind of weird. Sin City. As long as we get no errors, it should be working. There we go. All right, so it looks like everything's working as far as the effects and the filters go. Now what we're going to do is add the remove filters, which is really easy. So we'll go right below what we just did, and let's say Revert Filters, and we have a variable called Revert button. We'll add an event listener. Listen for a click. Okay, and in here what we'll do is we're just going to do Caman canvas. You can see the syntax for this is very easy. Image function, and then we just simply want to call this dot revert. All right, we'll save that. Let's try it. So now if I add some effects here and I click remove filters, it goes back to normal. Good. All right, so we're getting there, guys. The last thing we have to do is the download. Okay, we want to be able to, we don't want to just mess with the image and that's it, just for the hell of it. We want to be able to download it. So let's go down to the bottom. And we're first going to have a download event. So we have a download button, right? Yeah, download button. I want to listen for a click. Okay, and in here, we're going to, first of all, get the file extension. Because remember, we're changing the name. We want it to be the original name -edited.jpg. So that's the logic that we're doing right here. So let's say const file extension, if I can spell, and we're going to set that to the file name, which is a variable we defined at the top and we filled when we uploaded the image, which was right here. Okay, so we want to take that file name and we want to call .slice. Okay, we basically want to take stuff off the end. We want to do -4 because we want to take off .jpg or .png, and then that'll give us the file extension. Okay, so now I'm just going to initialize a new file name variable. So we'll say let new file name, and then we're just going to do a check for the type of file, make sure that it's an image. So let's say check or just check the image type. Okay, so we'll say if file extension is equal to .jpeg or file extension is equal to .png. Okay, if that's true, then let's set that new file name that we initialized. Let's set it equal to the file name, and we're going to call .substring. Yeah, substring. Because what we want to do here is take off, file name has the extension still, right? So we want to take it off. So we're going to use substring, and we're going to put in a 0 here, and then we're going to do file name dot length -4. Okay, so that's going to basically rip the extension off of the file name. And then what we want to do is add to that the string of edited.jpg. Okay, so hopefully that makes sense. We're taking the file name, which has the extension, ripping the extension off, and then adding, this should be -edited.jpg. All right. Now, the next thing we want to do is actually, we're going to create a separate function for the actual download, because right now we just basically formatted the name. So let's say call download. I hope all these comments aren't too annoying. I'm just trying to explain what I'm doing. So we'll say download. That's going to take in the canvas, because basically we're just taking it off the canvas, and then we want the new file name. All right, so let's create our download function. Which takes in canvas and file name. And what we want to do here is we want to first initialize an event. So we're going to say let e. Okay, and then we want to create a link. Okay, we can use this create element JavaScript method. So we're going to say const link equals document.createElement, which we use quite a bit in my modern JavaScript course if you want to check that out on Udemy. So we want to create a link, which is an A tag, and then let's set some props, or properties I should say. We're going to say link.download, and we want to set that to canvas, which has a method called toDataURL. Okay, and then that takes in the type, the image type, which is going to be image, or the MIME type, which is going to be image/JPEG. And then we also want to pass in 0.8. I'm not exactly sure what that is. I want to say opacity. I really don't know what that is, really. And then we're going to take the link and say href equals canvas. Oh, you know what? I screwed up. This is href. That's href. This should be link.download, and that's just equal to the file name that's passed into the function. Sorry about that. All right, so now we want to create a new mouse event by saying e, which is the variable we initialized, new mouse event, which will be a click, and then finally we just want to dispatch that event. So we'll say link.dispatch event and pass in e. All right, so that should grab it from the canvas, and that should let us download it with the new file name. So let's save it, and let's browse. We'll change it up. All right, so that looks different. And then let's click download, which isn't working. All right, let's see, I messed something up here. To data, this should actually be all capitals, URL. Let's try it again. I'll just add a filter. Let's do pinhole and download. There we go. And I actually already did this earlier, so I'm going to delete that and re-download. And check the name out. So it's the original name is Amazing Natural Photo. Now it's Amazing Natural Photo dash edited because of the logic that we did up here. All right, so let's save that. And let's go ahead and open that in the folder. And there it is. All right, so we now have an application where we can upload an image and view it. We can add filters and effects, and then we can re-download it and get that edited image. All right, so that's it, guys. Hopefully you like this. If you did, please leave a like. If you're not subscribed and you like this type of content, please subscribe. And that's it. I will see you in the next video. Thanks. Coding Dojo is a programming school that turns beginners into developers in only 14 weeks. If you're serious about landing a career in tech but lack the formal education or background, Coding Dojo will get you there in no time. With over 3,000 graduates to date, over 90% of their grads land jobs within 3 months of graduating, often making over $70K per year at tech firms of all sizes, from companies like Google to local startups. To learn more, visit codingdojo.com or click the link in the description below.